Hey everybody, welcome back. So in this video I wanted to talk about something that I had started to think a little bit about. I wanted to talk about loneliness. So I made a previous video about isolation and solitude, but that's a little bit different than actual loneliness because some people can kind of choose to withdraw from certain activities, like when they're feeling sad, or sometimes people, they're pretty outgoing, interact with people. They might kind of get to a point where they've had enough social interaction, they kind of just want to do their own thing for a bit. So that's a little bit of a separate entity from this. Because with loneliness tends to be a lot more unintentional. You tend to see it more in people who maybe they don't have a lot of friends, or they don't have a lot of ways to interact with others. They don't get out very much. Sometimes people on the internet can interact with each other, discuss topics, current events. Not everybody has internet access, and not everybody has computer literacy skills either. Like, they don't know how to use the computer. So, over time, somebody who's lonely, it can start to affect them really in a lot of ways, especially cognitively, because you don't always think about it unless you see somebody who's lonely. But if you take somebody who's very lonely, they do tend to be very quiet, very isolated, and some people can normally be quiet and isolated. But then if you look at something like loneliness on a long-term scale, somebody who's been lonely for a long period of time and doesn't have a lot of people to talk to, and they finally get the opportunity to talk to somebody that they seem like they tend to maybe light up a lot more, and they finally do get to speak to somebody. Maybe they can seem overly talkative. They can tell a lot of jokes. Honestly, they can probably have some characteristics that to the typical person might seem a little annoying, like, hey, why is that person talking so much? Or, why is that person talking about themselves a lot, like a lot of their hobbies? Well, when you take somebody who's lonely and they don't get a lot of time to talk about the things that they enjoy, a lot of things that make them happy, when they finally get that opportunity, it might seem excessive to you. But when you realize that maybe this person hasn't talked to somebody days, weeks, months, that can really add up after a while. So sometimes people can talk to somebody who's lonely and they may not always realize it until, maybe you remember the fact that this is somebody who doesn't often leave their house, or maybe they don't have a lot of friends to talk to. So that can actually be rather eye-opening to kind of see, like, hey, this person they're just so overly talkative because they're lonely and they're just happy to have somebody to talk to, Because when you spend a lot of time without somebody and just yourself, not only are you kind of stuck in your own mind, your own thoughts a lot, but if you have things like hobbies that you really enjoy, one of the very wonderful components of having things that you enjoy, like in my case, I like gaming, for example, is being able to talk about that to other people that enjoy it too. And hey, what games do you like to play? Or hey, I'm thinking about trying this game. Did you enjoy it? And that can be like with movies and other things too. And that's kind of something that people don't always think about either until that outlet is suddenly gone. Some of these online groups you can talk to people in are a very wonderful outlet for people who are lonely. But it can take time to get acquainted to some of those things. If you do kind of start interacting with people more and you are somebody who hasn't really been sociable in quite some time, some of your people skills can maybe be a bit lacking because it's like a muscle that you don't exercise. So even if somebody is lonely and they want people to talk to, sometimes reaching out isn't always easy because maybe they don't know how to reach out to people or where to reach out. Do they just join online groups? Do they go meet random people? I mean, how do you get yourself noticed when it's been so long? And loneliness is something that you may or may not see. Like, you might see it in people that are younger, but this is especially something that's way more common, way more prevalent in people in the elderly population, because a lot of them can be very isolated. If you see people who are in nursing homes, they can't just simply go out and talk to people. A lot of them are not very tech savvy, and if they are, they have limited access to it because maybe they don't have a computer in the long-term care setting that they're in. They may not have a tablet. If they do, they may have limited knowledge about it. They may or may not have visitors. They may not have family to visit them, or even friends. And if they do, maybe they live in another state, maybe they're busy, and then you have things like the pandemic that are making it even worse. So as I've gotten older, especially having just turned a year older, one of the things I really find myself thinking about a lot more is like, wow, when I get older, is that a problem I'm going to run into? And, it's a fairly common problem for that age setting, and how many people are aware of it? What can we do to make that easier for people, to give them more access? Because, again, a lot of us are used to just technology and just kind of maybe go out and meeting people, but not everybody has that luxury. Loneliness is also something that can be a very big reality for people who have certain types of social anxiety, because people with social anxiety, they already have a bit of an aversion to talking to people as it is. So if they do things, even like going to the grocery, can be very difficult for them if they don't want to have to talk to people face to face. Even talking on the phone is very difficult for some people, whether it's social anxiety or just anxiety in general. And then you have people with other more complex illnesses, like if you have any trauma-related illnesses, then if that's something that you struggle with on a regular basis, you could have certain fears associated with that. Like you could be afraid to leave your house. You could have like agoraphobia, where you're afraid to leave your house for whatever reason. You can't leave your house. You can't just simply go meet new people very easily. And the internet may help, but can you really trust everybody you talk to online? It's kind of another question too, because some people online are very, very nice and very kind, but then some people can try to sell you things. They can try to manipulate you. And if you're going back to the elderly population scenario, they are exceptionally high risk for people to take advantage of them, to manipulate them, to try to sell them things, get them to buy things. So that can also be another barrier with if they want to get to know people and talk to them. Are they going to be more vulnerable if it's somebody they don't know? Can certain problems arise later on? You hear stories of people meeting people online and they have such a great friendship at first, and then it just escalates. And that doesn't happen to everybody, but when you hear stories like that, it does kind of make you more paranoid as to like, hey, is that going to happen to me if I try to go out and meet some random person? Even just meeting people online, some of these dating apps, you don't always know who you're talking to. So with loneliness, you tend to see a lot of isolation, a lot of depression. People can feel hopeless. They can sometimes lose their sense of self a little bit with not being able to share their hobbies and the things that they enjoy. So really a lot of things that can come from loneliness that you wouldn't always expect. And then if you've ever seen some of these post-apocalyptic movies where you have that one person who's the last man on Earth looking for a reason to go on, and they're so lonely that they're maybe talking about the mannequins, they're talking to the mannequins in the stores that still remain. Really is actually rather sad how somebody can go so long without human interaction, and that need is so biological that it's like you kind of try to fill that void with other things. Because people, even if you're a person who likes your solitude, maybe you don't like to socialize very much, the fact that that's still a biological need, you still need some degree of it to thrive. Because people aren't meant to be alone. Like, you can be independent, do your own thing. As a species, we are not meant to be completely confined, isolated creatures, like, permanently. It's circumstantial more than anything else. There's even been cases of people who, if they were really lonely for a long period of time, usually, I know there was one show, I think, where I watched where this happened, and this girl, I think she was hearing voices, and I don't know if that was because of something else that was going on in the show, or she had maybe some other psychological illness, but I thought it was very interesting because there was a guy that was talking to her, and I think that she said something that she was hearing whispering, and keep in mind this is a fictional show, by the way, but I remember the guy, he seemed pretty understanding about it, and he just said something casually like, I think you've just been alone too long. And for some reason when he said that, that just really, I was like, wow, can people really be alone so long that happens? It's like, you don't have enough mental stimulation, so maybe your brain, I don't know, maybe your brain compensates for it in some way, but it was very thought-provoking, and it really kind of made me think about it. And I know there was this childhood movie that I didn't think much of it at the time when I was younger, but there was this older guy, and I think he lived alone, but he had visitors over, and he's such a goofball. It's kind of funny, and he was like, I think somehow he ended up towards the ceiling. He like floated up there and his friends were trying to get him down because he kept laughing. He wouldn't come down. And they were just hanging out with him for a while and I think they were having tea, and he was really enjoying himself, and his laughter filled the room, and he had seemingly obnoxious behavior, but yeah, so eventually the company had to leave, and it was actually really sad. He became very distraught to the point he actually started crying, and when I was younger, I just remember thinking, oh, they don't live too far from him, they can come visit him anytime, why is he sad, you know? But now it's like at the age I am now, it just really hit me differently. It's like, I remember I was just kind of like trying to sleep one night and I randomly started thinking about that for some reason. And I was like, that guy was just really lonely. Like, he was just so lonely that when they tried to leave, he was just like noticeably upset. And the whole time they're hanging out with him, it's like, oh, this guy's like obnoxious laughter, weird jokes, ha ha ha. Because he was just so happy to have company. It's like he just immediately lit up and his laughter filled the room and he was just super bubbly. And I'm just like, wow, to think that just a couple minutes of their time or even just a couple hours of their time just really made his whole day. And I just thought that was really thought-provoking now that I'm older, that I kind of understand that a lot more. And this is a kid's movie too, so I was like, wow, a kid's movie to really show how severe of an issue loneliness can be, especially in the elderly population, was very insightful. And honestly, that's why I wanted to make this video and talk about it, because the next time you see somebody who's lonely, or that you think that they may be lonely, don't be afraid to just maybe see if you want to spend just a little extra time with them, you know, or even if it's a phone call. You know, people kind of have that opportunity that could really make somebody's day. I mean, people don't think how even a couple minutes of your day, your time, can really make somebody's day, and just leaving the door open, that opportunity to speak with them, could really make a huge, huge world of difference. So, anyway, sorry if this video is a bit over the top with everything, but thank you so much for watching. So, until next time, have a great day, guys.